Hi everyone, my name is Meir Gabay. I'm from Products.io. I'm a DevOps consultant and engineer. And today I'm going to interview Dr. Dov Rubin. He's the CEO of HeartTrends. This part of the interview is part of a series that products do. Each interview is something like 10 to 15 minutes. And these interviews feature the startup leaders such as Dov. So, Dov, tell us about yourself. Tell us about your startup.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This particular startup deals with the fear that everyone have of taking a exercise treadmill stress test. It's the symbol of health, but yet it's the second most feared test to take. The first one is colonoscopy, which most people are afraid of. And the second one that they're afraid of is a stress test. And what we came up with was a revolutionary method we call a stress test without stress. By recording your heart rate for 20 minutes from just about any device that can record heart rate, we do an analysis that's been medically proven and equivalent to passing that stress test. In medical terms, it's basically an early screening test for healthy individuals to detect ischemia, that's the clogging of the arteries, which gives you a chance to reverse the process. You don't have to get heart disease if you detect it early, and that's what our test is about. A simple test that should be essentially accessible to everyone. Everybody should be able to take this early warning test, just like you take your blood pressure, just like you take an annual health check and you check your cholesterol. Why don't you check how your heart is doing? Get an early warning on that.
Okay, so this is the part where I'm interested in the technology and the privacy issue, because this is very invasive. You know, you're asking people to send data about their body to you, to your company. So my question is, how do you deal with all of the standards that you need to meet with, like GDPR, FDA, HIPAA, to meet with all of these? How do you do that in your company?
Very, very good question. Now, I'll make your question even more difficult on myself because it's accessible to the entire world. It's an application that anyone can download from the Play Store. And that means that the data is and can be accessible just about everywhere. So in order for us to come across as a serious medical test, we did have to undergo the processes and the certifications, both medical certifications and privacy and security certifications. So you just mentioned one of them. One of the standards, for example, for Europe is called GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. They're quite stringent. They're quite paranoid about your data getting out there. And so we had to undergo quite rigid design. We had to change our product design. From the simple perspective, a person has the app, he enters his name, he enters his ID number, and then he takes the test with the data, and then goes up to our cloud for analysis. But the truth is that name and ID is just terrifies the GDPR. And so what we had to do, once we had our medical certification, we then had to go and meet the standards of the regulatory body to maintain privacy. How did we do that? Well, we actually had to split our database. We had to split our database into personalized data and anonymized data. And remember, it's important for us to maintain the anonymized data because that's how the system learns. We're in the days of artificial intelligence. We want the program to learn. As it does each test, it gets more and more accurate, more and more predictable, the ability to predict whether you have heart disease. And so what we had to design for the GDPR, in order to meet their rigid standard, we had to divide the database into personalized data. Let's call it, for the sake, name and an ID number, and then the rest of the data that we collect. Now, here's a flip side. Theoretically, we could just do the test and erase the data. But if a clinic, a medical clinic, or a doctor's office, or even the person themselves are doing the test, and a week later they want to put it into the patient record, we still have to retain the personalized information so we can match the name to the test results. And so what the GDPR allowed us to do, so that we walk the middle path, what the GDPR allowed us to do was retain that data for 6 months. They said the reason for retaining the personalized data was for the business, the clinic's business. It has nothing to do with ourselves. And that satisfied them. And the way it worked was we have a personalized database linked with an encrypted link to the anonymized database. And automatically at the 6-month mark, that encrypted link gets deleted. It's gone. We don't have it anymore. If anybody comes crying to us to recreate the data after 6 months, we just tell them that we're sorry. We gave them 6 months in which to do it. But at least now we maintain the security and the privacy standards of the GDPR.
And now I have another question about, it sounds like you did a lot of work to make it happen, to support the GDPR standards. So how much time, if you can just give a rough estimate, did it cost you, in time? I'm sure it cost a lot of money, but I'm interested in the time that it cost you to do that, to meet the standard. Did it make the product, come out late by like 3 months, 4 months, 2 weeks? What was the effort?
Actually, it didn't. I shouldn't confess. It took us, I would say, less than a month.
Wow.
Because we had a good database design, and the programmer was a smart programmer and understood, once he grasped what their requirements were, he immediately said, look, then why don't we just split this off? And so he spent that time splitting the database, splitting so that we literally had real anonymized data. I think the hardest part for him was to make sure that we had automatic deletion, because we have to theoretically be able to delete. And there is one more requirement from the GDPR, and that is that within those 6 months, anyone who requests to have their test deleted can send us a notice, and then we would have to reconstruct it, and then we would have to get into the anonymized database and then delete the anonymized and personal database. That was actually his hardest task, believe it or not. So we did comply, and the rest is history. Now we're out there.
And also about that, earlier we talked, and you said that it was even, you made the process even easier because you had this sort of an agent that dealt with this GDPR in Europe, so you don't have to do everything on your own. So how was the process with the agent? How do you get one of these agents? Like, let's say I have a startup company and I want to meet the GDPR, for my health company. How do I do that? Who do I reach out for?
So you do need a representative who's resident in the European community. So you can find them. You can find them on the internet. They're not that hard to find. They are your representative agent. That is, if you're developing your program outside of the European community, then you have to have a representative who is resident in the European Union. And by the way, you just triggered one more requirement, which is important for everybody to know. The Europeans require that the data processing of the test be performed on servers that are resident in the European Union. So that's a very important thing. And that went into our decision what cloud system to select. We do our processing, server up in the cloud. And in our case, we chose Microsoft Azure. Probably Amazon would have worked just as well, because you can designate based on geographic location which servers shall process the order. So that was another requirement that we had to do, and that also took a little bit of work too.
And is there a difference between Europe and United Kingdom, or are they the same? Do you treat it the same, or do you have to do some, another step?
That's a very good question. So far, the UK haven't asked us to have it on their server. So far, we're processing UK data on the European server. If they ask us and they come to the requirement, it's easily done. We can easily split it away. And that's one of the reasons we need to know the geographic location, so that we can know where to process each country's data.
And also about the product itself. So was it affected by all of these privacy and standards? Was it affected in any way? Did it make your test go slower? Did it slow the processes of your researchers, or everything, business as usual?
No, it was really business as usual. Our application still worked the same. The goal was users should not really have to deal with where the test is being processed. That's beyond them. Remember, my dream was to take a medical test, a medical analysis, and make this accessible to everyone. And that means transparent to everyone. It should be as easy as using your smartphone. You just run the test, you run the app. And by the way, it runs off of a smartwatch as well. Same thing, same communications. It's reading your heart rate,
Amazing.
and it can communicate up to the server just as well. So that's the goal. Every person in the world, every healthy person in the world should be able to have their heart tested and have the early warning to see whether their heart is healthy or not.
Sounds like you have a good team over there. If it didn't really affect, your business core, the researchers and the developers and all the teams that you have over there. So it sounds like you did it the right way.
They did a lot of work. They just made it look easy. That's all.
Okay. But it sounds like, it's important to have this good team, because otherwise you would go like to a journey of 6 months or who knows how much.
Listen, you have to have clean coding. There's no question. You have to have clean coding because we're also an ISO certified company. And as part of the audit, the European audit, we have to keep to very strict standards of coding, unit testing, code reviews, and they're very strict. And we get audited once a year exactly based on this. And while it may seem tedious and may seem extra work for programmers like to just blast the code and let it go. When you're dealing with a medical device, any little mistake, any little recall can be fatal. Remember, you could be reporting a result that says a person is healthy when he's really not, and that's fatal. And that's why we actually, as a medical device, as a medical test, the auditing is rigorous, and therefore stepping back, the development process is rigorous, and it takes longer. And so I don't want everybody to walk away to think that it was just a walk in the park to just get the code developed.
Yeah, we know it wasn't.
But in the end, as I said, it's transparent, and people don't know and don't care how hard it was to develop. They want to do the test, and they can do it easily. We have people from around the world who we've never met. They download the app, they do the test by themselves. It just works. And that's really the goal of good software. That's the definition of good software.
Okay, so that sounds good to me. So that's it for today. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I would just say that when it comes to medical devices and software, where software is a service, not always is it about technology. Sometimes you have a competing product, and the medical community, being very conservative, will stand in the way and say, well, we don't want this new product because it's disruptive. It's a disruptive technology, but more importantly, it's going to ruin our business. And so you really need to work with the medical authorities and work with the various medical associations and show them actually it's going to increase the business, show them how it increases their business rather than taking away their business. It's a very important point to remember when you're dealing in the medical field. This isn't just like .coms or other sorts of products, new high-tech products. This is medicine. So that would
it was a great tip. Thank you for that.
All right, a pleasure.
Okay, Dov. So thank you very much for today, and hopefully we will do another interview, in the future.
Hopefully everybody gets a chance to do their own test. Thank you.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye.